Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Badgerland Birding Podcast. Today, I am joined by Peter Mundale, who is up in Minnesota doing some field work. And Peter is a birder that is very familiar with the Sax-sim Bog area. Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well.
So I can't help but notice that you are in the field as we speak.
Yes, I am. I'm currently up in northern Minnesota, just outside the Chippewa National Forest. We're doing some point count work and stuff up here. So yeah, it's a good time.
All right, that's fantastic. And before we get too far into it, I just want to note that this podcast is sponsored by Brome Bird Care. They specialize in squirrel-proof products, but also have a ton of other cool products as well. You can check them out at bromebirdcare.com. Peter, we've been trying out one of their squirrel-proof feeders actually, and it's kind of hilarious because the
Oh yeah.
squirrels will, yeah, they'll jump on the part of it that the birds are supposed to perch on, and what it does is it pulls the holes closed. So they'll jump on there like, oh, I
Oh,
got this, and then all of a sudden it like sinks, and it's just like, oh, never mind, don't got it. So it's been working so far,
awesome.
which is funny. But tell us more about what you're doing up there right now for your surveys and the work that you're doing. Are you in the
Yeah,
bog, by the way, or is it just surrounding areas?
surrounding all of northern Minnesota basically. So I'm
Small
working with
order.
yeah, I'm working with NRI, which is affiliated with the University of Minnesota Duluth. And yeah, we're doing bird survey stuff all across northern Minnesota. So we have different projects and stuff, but so far this season, we've been in the Chippewa National Forest. We've been up in the peatland areas way north in Minnesota, north of like Red Lake area by Canada. And then later this season, we're going to get into more of the Superior National Forest too. But these birds are only singing for a very short time, so we've kind of got to get all our surveys in here in basically less than a month. So it's a pretty go go go, very busy schedule, but it's very fun.
What kind of stuff are you seeing up there mostly? Obviously, the
Yeah.
northern part of the Midwest has a lot of interesting things that nest there.
Oh, the habitat is wild with every single different place. When we were up in the peatlands last week, we were having, Connecticut warblers, Canada jays, blackback woodpeckers, and even a lot of the kinglets, like ruby crowns, are going pretty crazy up there, and the golden crown kinglets as well, nesting dark-eyed juncos and stuff. That's a fun one with dark-eyed juncos. Is a lot of people associate them with a winter bird. They come to the feeders in the winter and stuff like that, but they do breed up in northern Minnesota, even as far south here as the Chippewa National Forest, but in peatlands, sphagnum moss and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's kind of what we were seeing up in the peatlands area. And then right now, like I said, we're in the Chippewa National Forest, which is kind of your typical deciduous northern forest and stuff. So a lot of freaking chestnut-sided warblers and American redstarts and ovenbirds and veeries and stuff like that. But also cool other birds like scarlet tanagers. And we've had a lot of black-billed cuckoos so far this year too. So yeah.
That's cool. I feel like there's a lot of things I want to know about this. There's like six different
Oh
questions
yeah.
that are flowing through my mind. Um, what's the Connecticut warbler situation like up there? Because they're a bird that you hear about being on the decline a lot, and I know for sure in Wisconsin because they used to be northern breeders here, and we got an email from Ryan Brady, who is up in Bayfield County, and a few years ago I think said don't come up there to look for them because they're so low in numbers that they don't want anything disturbing them. I think he said there was only like two pairs or three pairs
Yep.
left up there. So what's the situation like in your area for those birds? Are they doing okay, or are you seeing a severe decline as well?
I'm gonna be so real with you. It's a very, very, very sad story with
Yeah.
Connecticut's and stuff like that. So, to the best of our knowledge, too, the Wisconsin birds are gone.
Oh,
The
really?
Connecticut warblers are no longer breeding in Wisconsin. And there are places that you can find them in Minnesota. In like, there's some like peatland areas down here, kind of almost by the Chippewa, that they're heard during the breeding season. And like Sax-sim has a few nesting pairs and stuff like that. But the last true like stronghold for Connecticut's is that upper northern counties, and I can't specify all the exact locations or anything,
Sure.
like the
Yeah.
northern
Yeah, for
counties
sure.
and stuff up in northwestern Minnesota. And there were some pretty cool out mornings where I'd be sitting at like my first point of the entire season up there, and I get to the first one, start hitting my record on my stopwatch, start listening to birds, and I get two Connecticut's that start singing back and forth. And so that was like a pretty just magical moment and stuff like that. And in that morning I had like three Connecticut's. Next morning I had four, and the last morning I had two. So like in different areas and stuff like that. So they're up there in numbers, but not what they should be. They should be pretty a lot higher, and they're not going to be around forever, unfortunately, in Minnesota. If unless we keep doing some habitat management, big time. And there's a lot of people that are trying to study them more and learn more about them, but if we don't start doing stuff, they're probably going to be gone from Minnesota too in the next 5 to 10 years.
Do they have a stronghold in Canada as well? Is it one of those birds where we can say, well, they would be extirpated but not extinct? Or would this be a situation where it's potential that they would actually just go extinct when they're out of Minnesota, basically?
Yeah, that's a great question because a lot of it is, it's the research that's just trying to be done is this a climate driven thing? This is a habitat driven thing. A lot of some of these peatland areas are getting, logged and stuff like that. And, when the stuff grows back and it doesn't grow back very well. So, where there's being some studies done to see like, okay, how is habitat affecting it? Is it a climate change driven thing? Are they just moving, habitats becoming less and less? So they're moving farther north and north. But they don't even breed that far north into Canada. They're kind of more in the central region, even though there are peatland areas all the way up into um, Alaska and stuff like that. And then the other real question is, it's probably a mix of a whole bunch of factors, but there's also, yeah, Connecticut warblers have a very cool migration where they go and they cross the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America across there and even stopping at like Cuba and the Yucatan and stuff, but like on their way down to Venezuela where they nest. So these birds are already having to cross the Gulf. And is there stopover sites in like the that those islands? Is it being logged or forested, and now we're losing that stopover site where it could be, impacted as well. So there's definitely some things. It's like, is it more of a winter ecology migration thing that's causing their decline? Is it a habitat? And most likely, it's a cause of all of the above. But as we kind of saw with like Kirtland's warblers and stuff like that, if we really try hard and put some energy into it, we can definitely bring these birds back a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, the Kirtland's warbler thing helped because the habitat was such an issue in their nesting area. So the man,
Exactly.
when we pinpointed what it actually was, okay, they don't have enough habitat to actually breed in because they're so specific. It's like 10 to 13 feet, I think,
Hmm.
is what they like to nest in. So once that was established, then we could kind of get them back, and their numbers are okay at least.
Exactly.
It's crazy
Exactly.
because, I think they're still under 1,000 birds globally,
Yeah.
but we're like, they're thriving. They have,
Yeah.
800 birds. So that's still not the best situation, but it does seem like they figured
No.
it out. Seems like the challenge for so many of these birds that have these medium to long distance migrations is we have really no control about what happens in their wintering areas. So if their
Exactly.
wintering
Yeah.
habitat's being destroyed, we can't just be like, hey guys, hey, people down in Venezuela, stop. We
Yep.
just don't have the
Exactly.
ability to do it. That was actually a big problem with the monarch butterfly because the areas where they winter down in Mexico are getting kind of deforested. So all of a sudden the habitat down there is disappearing, even though the habitat up here might be okay. Do
Hmm.
we have any answers at all on the Connecticut? Do we even have hypotheses about what the problem is?
Long story short, they're a very understudied species.
Hmm.
They're so cryptic and stuff like that. Like even like nest searching for them is nearly impossible. And so yeah, there's still work being done to help try to understand them a little bit better, but I think there needs to be a little bit more. But yeah, they're such a cool bird. They're some people, a lot of people and birders really they're familiar with Connecticut's as a, something if they really want to find on migration. They're kind of in
Hmm.
some places, at least in Minnesota, I know for sure, like they're like a holy grail. When some start showing up in the cities at late May, early June, the birding group chats and everything start going crazy because people want to see them. And so I think if birders really wanted to, if people are going to do some projects and try to help save Connecticut's and really kind of boost their numbers, I think they would have a really strong birder backing with it, similar to kind of with the Kirtlands and stuff, because they are pretty well known um, warbler and stuff like that. But it kind of maybe follows along the entire giant trend of the 3 billion birds lost. Just species are declining all across North America, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is a sad situation. And I would talking about things that are understudied. I think almost every bird is understudied because I
Truly,
did a
yeah.
video about brown-headed cowbirds the other day, and the anecdotal information that I had and the lack of concrete information on what their habits actually are was astonishing. Because there
Yeah.
was stuff like one study and only one study showed that if you break a cowbird nest, there'll be retribution by the parents. And then other sources are saying, no, there's no evidence to support that other than this one study that might be bogus. So I don't think people are even studying those birds that you see everywhere, let alone the birds that you have to put on hip waders and traverse into the peat bog to find.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. No, there's some cool stuff going on with like all birds need there's so much more to learn and stuff like that. And I think a lot more, observation, it seems like a lot in ecology right now. There's a lot of valuable data coming from these new like transmitters and stuff putting on birds. But a lot of good hard evidence and just research comes just from observational ecology of these species. So I think if we kind of keep not forgetting the old ways of ecology, but get back some of that observational ecology with some of these species and really start to dive in. I think that could help understand a lot more with them. But also, birds do weird stuff. I've been hearing it just about every single morning with like, you think all what these birds sound like. Black and whites do like the wheezy, wheezy, wheezy. Chestnut sideds do the please, please to meet you and whatnot. But these birds, there's some mornings I'm standing out there, I'm like, what the heck is this?
Mm.
Like, it's a red start doing something weird. It's a Chessie only doing the half of the song, or the
Oh,
Nashville,
absolutely.
doing a first and a part and then sounding like a winter wren. So it's like their birds do so much wild stuff too that there's always so much more to learn. And that's, I think, one of the things I love most about birds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're silly. There's this chickadee that lives at my parents' house, and it has a raspy boreal chickadee song, but it's a black-capped chickadee, and it'll just sit there in the bush. You'll get a clear view of it, and it's just got this deep, raspy, smoke 10 packs a day song. And you just
Sure.
look
Yeah.
at it and you go, "What's the matter with you? What are you doing?"
Yeah. For
Oh,
sure.
that's pretty silly. Um, are you, when you're doing this research, what's the methodology? Are you doing just counts? Are you trying to observe behavior?
Yeah, so the majority of like what my work is point counts, and basically point counts are, you get a GPS marker. You go to the GPS marker and you have a big sheet that looks like a bullseye, and you're listening to all the birds and you're plotting them on the bullseye where they are, 10, 25, 50, 100 meters out. Um, and this project's been the National Forest Bird Project is through that has been going on for a very long time, 30 plus years now. So we have the kind of the cool long-term data going on, and I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's one of the longest going point count studies in North America and stuff like that. So it's a super cool one, but also, it's not point counts that are on trails and stuff. It's, you just park on the side of the road and you're like, all right, my point is 200, 400 meters straight into the woods that way, and you're bushwhacking through alders and ferns and nettles and down trees and all this sorts of stuff. But yeah, it's a super rewarding job so far, and it's very very adventurous and stuff. But yeah, so you get out to the point and you start a stopwatch, and for 10 minutes you're recording all the birds that are on there. We do some basic veg surveys and stuff too, and then you're on to the next one, and you have basically 12 of these points to finish in 4 hours. So so far I've been able to kind of do it pretty easily with the first week or so here, but I think to get some later points, it's going to be running from point to point.
Have you ever had a point where you just look at it and you go, "Nope, I'm not going in
With
there."
I haven't yet, but I this morning I was in a spot, and it's a lot of like experimental forest stuff, and there's like alder. Alder is the bane of my existence so far, and I know it's only going to get worse. And you get down in here, and there's about 6 inches of water. Everything's like rotten and mush. Like might step on a log, but it half just like crumbles and breaks
Yeah.
below you, and you're like, all this alder is so thick you can't see 50 yards in front of you or anything like that, and you're like, all right, just keep pushing. And not to mention the tens of thousands of mosquitoes that are following you and
Well, I
everything
was gonna
like
say
that.
that because I saw on Instagram a video that you put out there, and the mosquitoes were absolutely intense, and that looked disturbing. And I don't know how you're putting up with that. I don't know if you're just itchy all the time, or if you find a way to make sure they don't bite you, or what you're doing out there.
Yeah, my friends are asking me the same thing, and I think the best way to put it is you just go full mosquito hazmat. So I'm wearing like long, like thick canvas pants in that are tucked into rain boots, and then I have thick like PVC rain gear, our rain pants on top of that on the outside. So like wood ticks aren't getting in, mosquitoes that can't bite through any of that. And then you're in a like pretty light, it's as lightweight as you can get with it still being good rain jacket, wearing basically leather work gloves, and you have a head net that's tucked into your shirt, and a hat so it keeps it slightly away from your face, and that's kind of what you're rocking and rolling with. It's a, it's definitely it's full mosquito hazmat. So as long as like they can't bite through it, they can't get into me. So it's just dealing with the noise of 1,000 mosquitoes
Which
buzzing
that
around you,
alone
crawling
would annoy
crawling on
me. Because
you.
even
It
one getting near your ear, I hate.
it kind of becomes a white noise after a while, but the real kicker is when
You
you're
have
trying
it
to
on
do
when
a
you're trying to sleep.
survey.
You get used to it and you're just like, you play it when you're about to go to bed. Ah, yes.
Oh yes, the sound
Relaxing.
of mosquitoes. Yeah. It kind of is. It's kind of fun though when you have so many mosquitoes and you're like trying to count birds and you're like, swatting away. So they kind of go away so you can listen for like a few seconds and just because you can't, it's hard to hear birds over the sound of mosquitoes and stuff. It's wild, but the birds are like I said, the birds that are in there, the Connecticut's, the blackback woodpeckers, the Canada jays, they make it all so worth it and stuff like that. And we're out there early morning, so it's still pretty cold. But if you're having to be in that late day like we were last week a little bit, it gets pretty hot pretty fast. But that is what it is.
Yeah, it's funny to think about the North Woods in general because a lot of stuff you listed there, well, first of all, it's great stuff that most people don't get to see on a regular basis. It's stuff that
Yeah.
I view a lot of times as winter birding stuff. You know, the Canada
Oh,
jays,
totally.
blackback woodpeckers. You probably have some nests of great grays out there someplace. And also, we go on a trip to Minnesota Boundary Waters area every year. And,
Mm-hmm.
you got the redstarts nesting up there, the bald eagles, magnolia warblers. And it's just interesting to see how old and untouched a lot of that forest is because
Oh,
you look at
absolutely.
the animals out there and you recognize that this stuff has been happening for centuries and centuries and centuries, the same stuff coming back to the same area, nesting in the same places. And a lot of times there's no humans that are interfering with it. And it's just a
Oh, totally.
fascinating step out of the human experience into the natural experience.
Absolutely. One of like the cool things was even this morning on account, I had a brown-headed cowbird, which most people are like, that's a typical yard bird, typical urban bird,
Went
and stuff like
right
that.
for the Connecticut warbler nest, didn't it?
Yeah. I wasn't thankfully wasn't in the peat bog and stuff like that. But it was the first brown-headed cowbird I'd had in a few weeks up here. Just because we kind of more create that habitat with manicured lawns, stuff like that. And so, they're definitely still an issue and a threat to like a lot of our thrushes and berries and stuff, but they're just not up here in the numbers as well. So
Mhm.
it's like, yeah, you mean untouched, truly getting back into some of these areas. It's like, just pure woods, and not seeing like some of the mornings we'd be driving out to counts and yeah, you wake up and your count yours is 45 to an hour drive away from camp and it's all dirt roads. Last week I didn't see pavement for the entire week. And it's just yeah, just untouched area. And it really makes you think like, Minnesota is such an insanely good birding state. We have so much diversity of habitats and stuff like that from, this bog peatlands to like out west to get more prairie pothole kind of regions, grasslands. We have Lake Superior, which creates our fantastic migration to Hawk Ridge every fall and stuff. So, and then the deciduous forest in Crow River Valley, there's so much cool habitat up here. So it's really awesome to be able to see some of that and yeah, embrace lots of those birds that people think are more winter species, but yeah, they're here year round breeding. I was on a trip about a week 2 weeks ago now, and I came back down. I stopped in Sax-sim on my way back, and I ran into my friend Eric Brunke, who I know you guys know
Yep.
as well.
Yep.
Just ran into Eric on the side of the road, and he's like,
As one
look at what I
does.
got here. Yeah, 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 as one does. And he had Canada jays with fledglings, and parents were coming and feeding the fledglings and stuff like that. And it's so cool to see those birds, not when it's -16 out too. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about when it is -16 out because this was
totally.
obviously a massive year at the Sax-sim Bog. We
It
went up
was,
there
yeah.
and hung out with you for a day when you got us a grand total of no owls, I might add.
Oh, I know it is the biggest. I need to try again. I need to try again. I need a second chance at redemption.
It was still fun though. We got boreal chickadee, which was good. We got a bunch of other cool stuff, which was really good. And then the next day was the owl day, so it all
Yeah,
turned
you
out all
guys
right.
slammed the owls the next day, which
We
was
did, yeah.
fantastic.
We got like one of every species pretty much that you could get up there. We got
That's awesome.
nice looks at boreal, nice looks at great gray, nice looks at northern hawk, random barred owl. Did we tell you about the barred owl thing? It was weird.
No.
So we were driving one of those roads, and there's a muskrat that is just walking along the side of the road in the middle of
Okay.
winter. Just like,
As one does, of course.
yeah, I don't know what the deal was with it. I don't know if it was sick. I don't know if it was a younger one. I don't even know what it was really doing out or on the road. So we get out of the car to look at it because we're thinking, what if it's hurt or something? What do we do about this? Because it was just in the middle of the road, it's gonna get hit or something. So we're looking at this muskrat, which seems like it'll look at us and then it'll just keep going. So, it acknowledges our presence and it's like, don't care about you, keeps going. And then we notice there's a barred owl watching it. So in from the woods, there's this barred owl just watching this muskrat. And as we're standing there 5 feet from it, it comes and tries to take it. So we
Oh
don't
my
even know what to
gosh.
do here because we don't, the barred owl's got to eat. We don't really
Yeah.
want to see it take down this muskrat. So we're just, what do we do about this situation? and we just ended up leaving because the muskrat ended up going down into some cattails, so it was kind of hidden at that point. But we went back about an hour later, and the barred owl was still there, just sitting in the same perch. So I don't know whatever happened.
Interesting.
Weird
All right.
situation.
Crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
so you guys got pretty much everything then. Great, because you said you got great gray hawk owl,
we
barred owl.
did. We got a
Get some
snowy
even
as well.
snowy.
Hmm.
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about as good as it gets. We did that one day with some friends from the UMD Bird Club and stuff. We did a day. Actually it was Super Bowl Sunday, which was perfect because it's Super Owl
Yep. Of
Sunday,
course.
and we got all five owl species there too. So
Very
yeah, it was a
nice.
fantastic winter.
I was kind of hoping we could find a short-eared somewhere too, and just push it to six. Go
Yeah,
nuts.
exactly,
Breech
exactly.
owl, great horned owl, something else.
Something, yeah.
It's the only place you can probably get seven or eight if you really, really want it. If you really got lucky and
Yeah, I mean, this saw-whets, especially around kind of more late in February, as they're just starting to come back. Shorties are pretty hard in the winter. They typically winter farther south in Minnesota.
yeah, we have
But
them
if
down
we
by
get a
us.
light, yeah, if we get a light snow year, they'll kind of hang. I always think of them as like kind of hanging with the line of the rough leg hawks,
Oh yeah,
as that
yeah.
snow gets down, the roughies will go further south, and the shorties are always kind of with
Hmm.
that line too.
The roughies and the shorties.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about how kind of crazy the bog situation was because
Oh yeah.
there was a lot of human problems up there this year from a lot of different fronts. You had the
There
people
was, yeah.
that were mad that sightings were starting to get repressed from the general population. You had people that were accusing guides of not letting information out because they wanted to get paid. You had locals angry at the fact that birders were there misbehaving in general. You had people upset at the photographers getting way too close to the birds. What do you make of the entire situation this year? 'Cause I saw you posted some things that were kind of like, be a respectable distance. We obviously are in the
Yeah.
same camp on that. People
Oh,
are
100%.
People
Yeah.
are posting selfies of them with an owl on their camera, and people are applauding it as a fantastic, great photo.
Yeah.
Tell us your take. This is
Yeah.
the chance to
It's
get it all out.
Oh boy. It was a bit of a circus this winter, dude. Not even gonna lie. And not even just in the bog, all up and down. Great grays and boreals, which are the main two that were the issues and stuff, were they were found all up along the North Shore and stuff like that, all the way in Sax-sim. And even far western Minnesota got good pushes of them too, but that's not where the photographers and stuff were like that. But yeah, so I like to put it biggest way is eruptions are super cool because they're a natural phenomenon of food swings, and they give us this spectacular opportunity to see, large numbers of great grays and boreals and birds that we are typically don't ever see. Boreals probably breed in Minnesota in very small numbers, but they're so secretive, and you're never going to see them in the non-breeding season, or in the breeding season. So these eruptions give us that opportunity, and so quite a few of us knew this was happening as we started. I work up at Hawk Ridge and do some volunteer with owl banding and passerine banding and stuff. And so we knew beginning of October we started catching boreals, which last time we started catching boreals that early was in 2004 with the spectacular eruption. So
Mhm.
we kind of knew it was coming. We didn't know to what degree or anything like that. So um, typically when we start catching boreals or and stuff like that up at Hawk Ridge, it's about 2 to 3 months before they really start showing up, and almost basically to the day. It was be like first week of January. Birders are out looking for their first of the years and stuff like that, and doing all that stuff, and all of a sudden boreals start getting found all up along and down the roads, which was so weird too because typically you start seeing boreals on the side of the roads when the snowpack gets higher, and we had no
Mhm.
snow in January.
Yeah.
So that just means surely how in dire need of food these birds were. They're already out in
Which
January.
let's
So
talk about that real quick because people just assume they're around because they're around. And that's one of the things is
yeah,
they're around because they really, really need food. They would not be
definitely,
down this far if there was adequate food in the north. So I think people forget
definitely,
that. And they just think, oh, it's doing totally fine and it's just here because natural phenomenon. And they forget that it's here because it needs to be here. And they would probably
absolutely,
prefer
yeah.
not to be here.
Definitely, yeah, especially with our boreals too. Jumping back to just the banding thing, like when you're catching boreals, we only caught out of like the I think 70 or so that we got this fall, only like a handful, like literally five or so were hatch years. All which are like the young of the year. All the rest were full adult birds, which kind of makes us think that basically they just had failed nesting this year. There was so little food that they couldn't even feed their own chicks or try to nest or anything like that. So when you get that happens, that's when the birds come down. So yeah, they're coming down looking for food, and they're Um, I wouldn't used to use the word starving in that early January point, but they are looking for as much food and they're not getting as much as they need to. Um, so the problem with that is obviously you get a bird that's very stressed, looking for food and stuff like that. Often the boreals, are in the sun trying to keep themselves warm, use as little energy as possible when they're hunting and stuff like that. So the big issue comes when people find birds like that. Owls, no matter the time of year or whatnot, if you're looking at an owl, even if you're 100 yards away and you really zoom in, you can tell that that owl's watching you. They
Hmm.
know you're there long before you even see the bird and stuff like that. So when people find owls and stuff like that, and you get up to them, that bird knows you're there. And even if you're far away, it still knows you're there, but it's not viewing you as a threat. The issue gets when people want to get that golden photography shot, and some of us were joking with these giant 3 foot lenses, and like, and they're 5 feet away from the birds. Like, what are you trying to get, like a retinal scan of the owl?
Colonoscopy.
Uh,
Got to make
yeah,
sure there's no
exactly.
polyps.
No kidding. And it's like just things that we didn't understand. And then that bird gets more stressed. And often, you know, the bird would fly back into the woods to get away from the photographers and stuff like that. And I should preface this when you jumping kind of back to what you said about, people getting kind of mad if like guides were like gatekeeping and stuff like that. And in the early part of, the winter, that January time when Boreal started showing up on using on the Minnesota Discord, and also there's like some group chat for like just some local birders and stuff like that in Duluth area. Sightings were being and pins were being shared left and right. Like people were just throwing it everywhere because we were like so excited. We want people to see these awesome birds and these inside that are down. And it quickly, like very quickly, turned to all of a sudden there are huge issues with trespassing because these birds aren't
Hmm.
in like on the side of a state forest road. It's in the side of a, just slightly rural Duluth road. And, oh, Boreal flies back into the woods and 10 photographers go charging in after it to go take a picture of it. And all of a sudden there's angry landowners and stuff like that. And so once it became more of a trespassing issue and these birds are just getting harassed and not, we had multiple Boreals that died in front of photographers, just keeled over and due to stress and starvation. So when that became a real issue, people were like, "Oh, I find a boreal, I don't say anything about it."
Hmm.
And we did have some people in Duluth that were collecting data to do, basically a winter ecology distribution of how many boreals roughly were down here, what like their distribution was and stuff like that. So like there were sightings that were being, if somebody found one, you'd share it to one of these three people kind of a thing. And of course, guides would kind of have their own connections of just, talking to each other to help figure out where birds are. But truly, the gatekeeping side of thing I don't understand because the birds were everywhere. I had, one day when I was, driving around, I found one boreal. I found another boreal that was with a group of like photographers. So I kind of like just saw the group of people and was like, oh, there's a boreal.
Hmm.
And then driving back that night, I had one fly in front of my car, so they didn't hit it, of course, but so they were just everywhere and just thousands of them were down. So it was just kind of a balance of odds if you were really looking around. But yeah, I understand the frustration when people really want to see a bird like that and it kind of gets, hidden, but the birds were really kind of being harassed by people. So we kind of just started kind of keeping them to ourselves and stuff.
Yeah, and of course, what people don't understand too is they think just on the one instance. So it's, well, I've got my pictures, I got too close, the bird flushed. That's fine. It's just one instance. But that's
Hmm.
happening day after day after day, potentially multiple times a day. And that's a
Multiple times the same
constant
bird, probably
interruption.
too.
Most
Yeah,
likely, I would think, yes.
yeah,
So it does do damage over time, even though people will always, oh, well, what do you mean? I can go get a picture of it and that doesn't impact anything. I mean, it does impact something. And
totally.
you can see it from all sides, really. Like you can see,
Yes.
I went up there, I drove 10 hours because I wanted a boreal owl and no one told me where one was. You can see it
Yeah.
from every perspective, really.
Oh, I totally can. Because, as a person who I love birds, I love birding with people, and I love sharing experience with birds. I really wanted everybody to see a boreal. I made it kind of my goal because I'm part, I'm this year I was the vice president of the UMD Bird Club, and I'm like, the minute this started happening, I'm like, I need to get every bird club member to see a boreal, and I think we did. Everybody that wanted to see one did get to see one this winter and stuff like that. But yeah, so like quick like story time with like adding on to like the great gray side of things is I had one day where I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out owling. We sent it out to our our UMD Bird Club group chat and was like, hey, who wants to go out? We had a few people that had not seen great grays. I'm like, cool, let's go. Let's go see if we can get. So we piled into my little Toyota Camry and started driving the back roads in the snow and just you're scanning everywhere. And so we were kind of having a slow day. checking all kind of the normal spots that I'd been seeing them, and really hadn't had anything. So I'm like, okay, I know there's some that are up around the Two Harbors area. We'll start driving some roads there. And so we start driving some roads, and all of a sudden we see the group of
The
photographers,
gathering.
the gathering, if one might say. Yes, yes. So I was like, okay, there's an owl here. It's probably a great gray and stuff like that. I'm like, let's go see it. So we park our car, and we all hop out and we start walking towards the group of photographers. And I'm looking, and I'm like, where's the great gray? I'm trying to kind of see where like people are like taking like kind of looking, and I'm trying to look like the group of photographers, all their lenses were facing one way. And I was trying to look past them to look for the owl. And all of a sudden it clicked that the owl was on a tripod,
Mhm.
and all of these people were within 20 feet of that bird.
Yeah.
And to back up, like, let's look at it from the owl's perspective. You have a great gray, it's down here, has absolutely no food and is starving. And he's up in a tree. Probably that's how it started. Somebody found it up in one of those like birch trees, hunting that open field. And that great gray is sitting there, and it's here's a mouse underneath the snow or stuff like that, and in the grasses. And photographers are showing up, kind of looking, and that owl is recognizing every single one of those people as a threat, something that could eat me, something that could kill me. Because great grays are normally a very, very wary bird
I
species. You
think that's a
never get close to them
misconception
not
too,
breeding.
because a lot of the
Yeah,
people that would comment would be like, "Oh, it wanted to be near you, or else it wouldn't have been." Like, oh,
totally.
they're
Yeah,
just friendly. They don't know that humans could potentially be dangerous, so they don't care. That's what a lot of
yeah,
the narrative was from people that were proponents of getting really close to stuff.
totally. And that great gray's mindset is, okay, yeah, there may be 30 predators around right now, but if I don't get that mouse that's under the snow right there, I'm gonna die anyways. And that's an incredible amount of stress on the bird. And also, typically, when you have photographers that are stomping around, that little mouse under the snow is going every which way, and the owl can't even effectively hunt anyway. And so this bird would kind of keep trying to come down lower and lower to get a better like hearing and stuff like that of where that food is, because that's the other thing about great grays. They only hunt by sound. They don't ever see their prey. When they're hunting for it, they just are grabbing for it.
And I don't remember
In
if
the
it's
snow.
great grays as well, but I know Boreals are supposed to be nocturnal hunters anyway. So it's
Totally,
pretty
yeah,
dire when these animals are hunting during the daytime instead of just at
absolutely.
night.
Yeah, so there's so many things going on with them. Yeah, yeah. Boreals are completely nocturnal hunters. Great grays are kind of, nocturnal, but also like crepuscular, kind of hunting
Hmm.
on the edges of the days and stuff like that. But also, currently we're in the breeding season right now, and great grays are out hunting during the day because they got to feed chicks and stuff like
Yeah.
that here too. So yeah, a little bit all of it. But yeah, in the winter especially, it is really a dire thing. So I guess like best practices with owls and stuff like that, because eruptions are going to happen again, or if anything, even just general winters, when there's always great grays up in northern Minnesota and Sax-sim and stuff like that. You can find them. General thing is, keep like a very comfortable distance away from that bird. I always say, like at least like 100 yards. Sometimes that bird will keep hunting around. That's the other thing is we'd have many times this winter, we'd keep like a, 100 yards, 50 yards from the 100 to 75 yards from the bird. And all of a sudden that gray would be hunting around. And as long as you're not moving and not, disturbing the food or like the making more extra sound, that bird would keep going around and going around, hunting different treetops, looking for mice and stuff like that. Sometimes it get close, sometimes it go back out and around. But I'm not having where the great gray's flying away from me every single time and like knows that I'm a threat and that I'm there. And then, making little noise, not slamming car doors, just kind of being quiet, basically trying to make as little of an impact on that bird as possible. With boreals, the thing was when you found boreals, typically they're sleeping eyes closed, kind of head tucked back and stuff like that. And the biggest thing with a boreal, how you're immediately too close, which again, should be staying far away anyway. At least boreals are on the side of the road, at least a width of the road. You should be on the other side of the road, if not a little bit back too. But if the eyes ever opened, that was a sign of I'm way too close to this bird. He now knows that I'm there and getting ready to, ooh, should I fly? Should I move? Um, so that was the thing with boreals. But yeah,
You feel like you got it all out?
I think I got it all out. I've been holding that in all winter. No,
I
it
was
really,
I was telling
yeah,
you this when we were discussing it back then. In Wisconsin, a lot of times people, photographers will kind of connect with each other on where the owls are nesting or where an owl is, and they will not share it with birders, but they will continuously get way too close day after day after
yeah,
day. So you'll see these
yeah.
pictures of a saw-whet, but the picture's taken inside of the tree. You can tell that somebody literally stuck their lens in the tree and was taking a picture of this owl that has its
Oh
eyes
boy.
wide open and is just trying to figure out how it can escape. So I would say
Yeah.
that probably 3 or 4 out of 5 in my opinion, people try to argue birders also do these things, but I don't really think that that's necessarily the case. I think it's mostly the photographers. 3 or 4 out of 5 photographers are good and
Oh,
don't have any
100%. I
problem.
met some great and fantastic people. That was the other fun thing is, you'd get on the side of the road with a great gray this winter or a boreal and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, yeah, some photographers would show up and, I'd be there, respecting my distance and stuff like that. And almost every single person I ever had, I'd never had to say, "Oh, you're too close, back up." Like I'd be sitting there with people and talking, like, chat, like, "Where are you from?" And and lots of people were from out of state and stuff like that, and getting to chat and like enjoy that bird and stuff like that. I truly only had, I think, two or three different times. There was a group of people that I was like, hey, you need to back up. You need to stop getting close to the bird. And normally when I said that, like five or six other people there were like, yeah, you're way too close, dude. And like I said, truly, there are so many that were great people that I met this winter. And yeah, unfortunately, it really does just take one or two bad apples, and all of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah, that's what for a lot of these sensitive species too. I don't know if the filters are the same throughout eBird in the country, but for Wisconsin, now any bird like a great gray or northern hawk owl that shows up or gyrfalcon is completely suppressed on eBird and not shared with the community because there was a
Mm-hmm.
specific great gray owl incident where one showed up in the Madison area and then people got way too close and it turned into a fiasco, I guess. So they
Sure, sure.
just will not let those sightings out at all, which is a real shame because those are some of the most interesting things was when a hawk owl would come down to Wisconsin, we would go try to find the hawk owl. It was a real spark to continue birding. So it's sad that
For sure,
people
for sure.
aren't going to get that chance now because some people couldn't contain themselves and wanted to get way too close and were essentially
Definitely.
selfish in the way that they were observing the birds.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you with that. I think for Minnesota, for as long as I've been a birder now, hawk owls and great grays have always, and gyrfalcons have always been suppressed on, like, been on sensitive species. Boreals were not up until
This year, right?
this year. Yep. So that's like even when we were catching them this fall, it's like, okay, you can't say anything. Just because we wanted to keep it quiet too, just because that was at a banding station, so it's different than like the birds are in the woods and
Hmm.
stuff like that. But yeah, and I still remember when I started birding, long-eared owls weren't sensitive species, but there you have a bird that's roosting in huge colonies basically. Flocks, if one would have used flock to describe owls. But people would go crash into those wintering sites and
Oh yeah.
all the owls spook and stuff like that. So there's part of it that I'm like, I think it's so part of it is really unfortunate that like eBird and stuff like that is not accessible for people to get those sightings. But I truly do think, building community for birders, and that's a great thing for young birders because a lot of birders that are around, they love it when young birders reach out and are interested in stuff like that. And maybe it's not the call of like, hey, where do I go find great gray owls, and what like that. But like, hey, I'm really interested in seeing some of these birds, that are kind of a little bit harder to find. Do you have any tips? Do you have any tricks? And birders are so willing to share some of those spots and stuff too, especially if they know the person they're giving it to is a trustworthy and good person that's going to respect those birds, which most birders that I know are. So,
Let me
yeah.
throw this out there.
Ooh.
Birders on eBird get basically an Uber rating, except it's an eBird rating. And to access the sensitive data, you have to have a high enough eBird rating to know that you're not going to just go ruin everything.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I could get behind that. I could get behind that. Yeah.
I don't know who'd be doing the rating, just like in a group of
Yeah.
people, and then you're like, hey, I saw this guy get way too close to that great gray owl. I'm going to give him 0 stars.
Almost like the rate my photo, but rate the Z
Yeah,
breeder. Oh, that's
exactly.
funny.
Except then you would definitely get people that were just like trolling ethical birders and being like, I gave you
Exactly.
0 stars, man.
Oh man. Yeah. I think overall, as much as there was some craziness with the eruption this fall and stuff like that, it did get so many people. This was such a spark bird winter for so many people. I know so many people on campus that would come up to me and be like, "Hey, I saw this massive freaking owl on the side of the highway. What is it?" And I'm like, "It's a great gray owl." And you explain what's going on. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." And I know so many people that like came up to me like, they're like, "Hey, where do I find great grays? Check out this road. Check out this road here." They like send me a message or send me a photo back like, I found one, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, so it
Yeah.
was such a good winter for getting people into birding and stuff like that. And yeah, that's the magic of northern Minnesota we have some good winters and stuff.
It
But
must have been
yeah,
cool to be in the epicenter of it too, because the whole world of birding was kind of coming to you because everybody
yeah, it
wanted to
was
go to
wild.
Sax-sim this year.
It was really wild. And on top of everybody came for the owls and stuff like that. We had a pretty fantastic owl winter. But there were other fantastic birds that were around. We had some pretty reliable spots for three toads this winter. Blackbacks are pretty common. Not in Sax-sim, there's a few pairs, but you go farther north where there's been some forest fires and stuff like that, and there are
I love
blackbacks in
forest
there thick.
fires,
They do, yeah. The only boreal species that was really hard to find this winter was boreal chickadee.
which we found first
And
when we went
which we
there.
that was of course that's the one that we had to get, yeah. But even there was that one chickadee at Saxon that was like the only one, and there was a few that people would hear other places, but they had a really, really poor nesting season, so it makes sense that they were in pretty low numbers.
Yeah, it was definitely a good winter to be a Sax-sim area birder. Glad that
Definitely,
we got to
definitely.
go experience that. It felt like one of those things where you had to go experience it because otherwise you had major FOMO because we
Yeah,
just kept
exactly.
seeing people posting it and it was like, wow, we should go there just so we don't feel bad about not going.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it did live up to the expectation. So
good.
going forward, what are some of the events that are happening for you and the area in terms of birding? Talking Jagerfest, Hawk Weekend. What's on tap? Because we're kind of going into
Oh,
the summer now, and then it'll be
definitely,
fall
definitely.
before you know it.
Yeah, I'm really busy with work here for the next few months in the field and stuff, but I'm just looking forward to that. But as you get closer, fall migration is only basically 2 months away, if not even for some
It'll
shorebirds
sneak
like
up on
a
you.
month. Yeah, we get start getting pushes of those early nesting shorebirds end of July,
Hmm.
basically. Especially like buff breasted start coming through end of July, early August and stuff. So fall migration, and that's I spring migration is awesome. We had some great fallouts and stuff in Duluth and good numbers of birds. And all the birds look so pretty in their, fresh breeding plumage and everything. But fall migration is where it's at for me because, you know, let's say you had four warblers go up, two males and two females. Now they're coming back down, or two males, two females, and all their babies as well. So you're getting so many more birds coming down, and it's long and drawn out. Migration is going to start in beginning of August. And, at least in Duluth, it'll continue all the way through November, December as we still get winter finches pushing through and goshawks and stuff like that moving. So, it's just a long drawn out. So obviously I'm really excited for the hawk ridge season this fall. Excited to be back up there working at the ridge and, sharing magic of migration with people. But yeah, Jagerfest, I've had horrible luck with Jagerfest. Maybe that's not how I want to advertise, but I just pick the worst days to go. I pick the days that's raining or like,
Well,
fogged
those
in, and
could
I'm
be the
like, well,
best day, technically.
oh,
The
I know. No,
stormiest
true,
days
true.
should push the Jaegers closer to shore.
Exactly, yeah. But the one day I was out there this past fall, it was good with the gulls and stuff like that. So yeah, excited to get out to Jagerfest, Hawk Ridge in the fall, and yeah, then soon enough it'll be Sax-sim season again, and all the winter burning. It won't be as crazy without the owl eruption, but man, it'll be interesting to see what winter finches come down. I'm really hoping for another really good evening grosbeak and pine grosbeak year like we had back in 2021, 22. But
There's usually
yeah.
something usually
There's
makes its way
always
down.
something going on with northern Minnesota. Yeah, that's like the crazy thing is, it's such a vast, cold, northern area, and you'd be driving some of the forest roads, and this time of year I'm on some of those same forest roads, and the birds are like everywhere. You get hundreds of warblers that are singing. But you go the same roads in the winter, it seems like it's dead and frozen. But all of a sudden you see flocks of red poles and siskins, and maybe you hear a blackback, and you're like, oh, the quantity is really low, but the quality of birds is peak up there. So, yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of people might take the winter off from going to Sax-Sim after the excitement of last year. So, like I
most
said,
likely.
you may be out there alone for a little bit more of the year than you were last year. So,
Ooh, I'm
be
hoping.
be a different vibe. Um,
The other thing I also want to throw out to so many people too is, Sac-Zim is such an awesome and fantastic birding center, but I'm gonna let you all in on a little bit of a secret that maybe other birders don't want me to tell you. There are so many places in northern Minnesota that if you just get up, in some of the state forests, up there and just look on Google Maps, find some peatland habitat, you're gonna find all those same boreal species you're getting in the bog, and you're gonna find no people. So maybe that's a secret that nobody wants me to tell, and maybe everybody's still gonna go to Sax-Sim because it does have feeders that help bring in
it
more
just
stuff.
feels
But
so
all those birds
hospitable.
are
Derek
up there.
always says it feels like a hug, and I feel that when we were driving around the area, as soon as you leave the bog, you kind of feel like you're just out in the middle of nowhere. You're like,
Yeah,
if something happens to me, I'm toast out here. But if I go to the bog, that's a warm place to be. They have fires
that's
inside.
fair.
They have bird feeders. There's other people. There's a
That's so
connection.
fair. That's fair. Yeah.
It's cool because of that, I think. But yeah, I mean, Minnesota's got some great birding areas. It is a good state for birding. It reminds me a lot of Wisconsin, but with probably more northern forests in Minnesota. So
Yeah.
Definitely worth looking around. If you're gonna go Sax-sim, you might as well go hit up some other places too. Make it a full on, week
Totally.
if you got the opportunity to do that. We
Yeah,
did
hit the
list it as
gulls,
one
hit
of
the
the
winter
top
gulls, and
five. Oh, what were you gonna say? Winter goals?
I would say, yeah, hit the winter gulls in Duluth and the harbor. Hit the winter ducks. We always get long-tailed. This past year, I found a barrows and stuff out on canal. So there's always some cool ducks in the harbor there. Hit Saxum up for the winter finches and stuff. There's so much to do in Duluth in the winter.
There's been some good gulls at Canal. Obviously, the ivory gull that was seen there
Oh
at
yeah.
some point. So good stuff all over the Duluth area for sure. Is there anything that you wanted to say before I let you get going? Any last stuff on
Ooh.
Minnesota, breeding bird surveys, anything?
Um, I know it's such a great place to be and get out to go birding and stuff like that. So definitely I encourage everybody, especially people that aren't, from Minnesota or anything like that, get up to northern Minnesota during at least once in your life during the summertime, during that June time when all these warblers are singing and stuff, and definitely come up one time in the dead of January. Put on all your winter jackets and enjoy some of these winter birds and these summer birds because it's such a cool habitat and place to be when you have, summertime, you're having Blackburnian warblers and Cape Mays singing on these spruce trees and stuff. And then dead of winter, you're having white-winged crossbills and red poles in the same exact trees. So definitely encourage people to get up here to northern Minnesota and do some birding.
Where can people follow you if they want to see your adventures doing bird surveys and seeing
Oh,
how many mosquitoes you're dealing with?
totally. Yeah. I'm on Instagram. I have a private account, but I also have a photography account on there too. Just Peter Mundale. My photography one's Peter with a camera. So it's just,
Peter with a camera.
it's pretty good. Yeah. Peter, just enjoy it. I will be sharing some of my crazy stuff that I see during uh bird surveys and stuff. And I'll keep the bear count going. I'm at 7 bears so far, so
Oh,
we'll see how
geez.
much it keeps going.
All right, very cool. Thank you, Peter, so much for joining us, and thank you again to Brome Bird Care for sponsoring the episode. We're gonna have some videos out about that squirrel-proof bird feeder and some other interesting things to come too. So definitely can't say enough about Brome for giving us the opportunity and sponsoring the podcast. So thank you everyone as well for listening to us and watching this edition of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.